The day began with a golden haze spreading over the Italian countryside, the morning dew sparkling on the grass like tiny jewels. Birds chirped from olive trees that stretched lazily into the distance, and the soft hum of bees floated on the air. I was sprawled in the wildflowers next to the old lady's house, idly flicking my tail as Maurice bumbled about nearby. "Fluffy, look! I think I'm getting better at this." Maurice launched himself into the air, paws flailing in a futile attempt to catch a butterfly that had no intention of being caught. He landed in a heap with an exaggerated huff. I glanced at him, unimpressed. If your goal is to terrify the butterfly with second-hand embarrassment, then bravo! Mission accomplished. Maurice pouted, the tips of his ears pink with frustration. "You're just jealous of my athleticism." "Right," I said, stretching luxuriously in the grass. And Cersei Lannister was just misunderstood. Our banter was interrupted by Emma's cheery voice calling from the house. "Boys, come on, we're going on an adventure." Maurice perked up immediately, his tail flicking with excitement. "Did she say adventure? What kind of adventure? Is it dangerous? Are there dragons?" "Calm down, Khaleesi," I muttered, rising to my feet. "I'm sure it's just another one of her harebrained schemes." The house-hunting adventure. By the time we climbed into Vandalf, Emma was practically bouncing in her seat. The old lady, seated beside her, smiled warmly and patted Emma's hand like a doting grandmother. Her floral dress was crisp and clean despite the dusty roads, and her hands carried the faint scent of lavender and thyme. She muttered something in rapid Italian, and Emma, clutching her phone with Google Translate open, nodded enthusiastically. "She says this village used to be lively but has been empty for years. It's sad, but also full of opportunity." As we drove the short distance to the abandoned village, the scenery shifted subtly. The manicured fields and tidy olive groves gave way to overgrown hedges and wildflowers reclaiming stone walls. The village appeared suddenly, like a memory brought to life. Rows of weathered stone houses, their roofs sagging under the weight of time, clustered around a cobblestone square. Vines snaked up walls and broken shutters dangled from windows that hadn't seen glass in decades. Despite the decay, there was a kind of quiet beauty, a sense of history whispering through the cracks. The real estate agent met us at the edge of the village, a wiry man with a moustache that seemed to have its own personality. "Benvenuti," he said, bowing slightly. He greeted the old lady with the kind of respect reserved for local legends, then gestured for us to follow him. The first house we entered was a symphony of creaks and groans. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through a hole in the roof, and the faint smell of earth and time lingered in the air. Maurice darted ahead, his nose twitching with curiosity. "This place is amazing!" he exclaimed, his voice echoing off the bare stone walls. "It's like a playground for cats." "I think you mean a death trap," I said, eyeing a staircase that looked like it might collapse if someone so much as sneezed on it. "This place has more structural issues than Season 8 of Game of Thrones." Emma and the old lady, however, were enchanted. They explored each corner with a sense of wonder. The old lady pointing out charming details, a faded fresco here, an original wood beam there. She spoke with a passion that even Google Translate couldn't fully capture, and Emma nodded along, her face lit with excitement. Then Maurice, in a burst of inspiration, pounced into a dusty corner and emerged with a small wriggling mouse in his mouth. He held it up triumphantly. "Look, I caught one! I told you I could hunt!" Emma gasped, clapping her hands. The old lady laughed and exclaimed, "Bravo, Gatto! Bravo!" Maurice puffed up like a peacock, soaking in the praise. "Congratulations," I said dryly. "You've officially outperformed every character arc from the last Star Wars trilogy." Dinner and discussions. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, we made our way to the village's tiny cafe. It was the kind of place where time seemed to have paused decades ago. The mismatched chairs and tables were well-worn but inviting, and the walls were adorned with faded photographs of villagers from a bygone era. A faint smell of espresso and baked bread filled the air. The old lady led the way, greeting the cafe owner with the familiarity of an old friend. They exchanged rapid-fire Italian while Emma fumbled with Google Translate, eventually managing to order a simple but hearty meal. We sat at a corner table overlooking the square. The food arrived on mismatched plates, fresh bread with olive oil, a tomato salad that practically glowed with ripeness, and a pasta dish so aromatic that even I felt a pang of envy. Maurice, of course, was beside himself. "This is amazing," he exclaimed between bites of bread Emma sneaked him under the table. "It's like every bite is a love letter to my stomach." The old lady watched Emma carefully as she spoke about the houses they'd seen. When Emma mentioned one with an overgrown garden and a crumbling fireplace, the old lady smiled knowingly. "Con amore e pazienza, anche le cose più rotte possono diventar belle," she said. Emma turned to her phone, then back to the old lady with a look of wonder. "With love and patience, even the most broken things can become beautiful," she translated softly. Maurice sighed dreamily. "She's like Yoda, but Italian." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The warm glow of the cafe lights, the laughter of the old lady, the quiet hum of conversation from the other tables. It all felt like a scene from a storybook. Even I, in my eternal cynicism, couldn't help but feel a flicker of something. Hope, perhaps. Oh, by the way, if you're still watching this descent into madness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You've already come this far, might as well commit. Maurice blinked at me. "Who are you talking to?" "Don't worry about it," I replied, returning my gaze to the square. The morning sun filtered through the olive trees as we prepared for another day of exploring the abandoned village. Emma was practically glowing with excitement, chatting with the old lady as she gathered her things. Maurice and I, on the other hand, were still recovering from the indulgence of the previous night's feast. "Do you think we'll find the perfect house today?" Maurice asked, his tail flicking with anticipation. "I mean one with secret tunnels and a treasure chest full of gold?" I sighed, already tired. "If by perfect you mean barely standing and full of rats, then yes, I have no doubt." When we arrived at the village, it was bathed in the soft light of early morning. The cobblestones glistened with dew, and the air was crisp and fragrant, carrying hints of lavender and earth. The real estate agent greeted us with his usual flourish, leading us to the first house of the day. The Perfecto Discovery. The first few houses we toured were much like the ones we'd seen the day before, full of potential, as Emma put it, which was a polite way of saying a total wreck. Maurice, of course, found endless delight in each one, darting into every nook and cranny like a feline Indiana Jones. But then we came to the house. It was perched on the edge of the village, with a view that could knock the wind out of you, or, as I noted dryly, knock you out entirely if you leaned too far over the railing. The house itself was small and weathered, its shutters hanging at odd angles, and the stone walls bore the marks of years without care. But the charm was undeniable. There was an outside seating area shaded by an ancient olive tree, a little terrace that overlooked the rolling hills, and just enough space for a Vespa or two to park snugly by the front. Emma gasped. "It's perfect," she whispered, her eyes alight with possibility. The old lady, ever the sage, nodded in approval and murmured something in Italian. Emma held up her phone and Google Translate worked its magic. With a little love, this house could be beautiful again. Maurice pranced around the terrace, his imagination already running wild. "We could have parties here, or maybe build a cat castle. Fluffy, imagine the possibilities." I snorted. "Imagine the lawsuits when someone leans on that railing and takes a one-way trip down the hill." A twist of fate. Just as Emma was mentally moving in, the real estate agent cleared his throat. "Scusa," he said, gesturing toward the wall that separated this house from the one next door. He explained with dramatic hand movements that the house adjacent to this one was also for sale. Emma blinked. "Wait, you mean both houses?" The agent nodded enthusiastically. See, both for sale. Together, only €6,000. Emma's jaw dropped. 6,000 for both? You're joking. The old lady chuckled, saying something about how people had abandoned the village long ago, leaving these properties dirt cheap. Emma turned to me and Maurice, her face a mixture of disbelief and giddy excitement. "This is like a millennial fairy tale. 2 houses for less than what some people pay for a used car." Maurice was practically vibrating. 2 houses. Fluffy, do you know what this means? Twice the space to explore. Twice the hiding spots. It means twice the headaches, I muttered, but even I couldn't deny the potential for chaos. Emma turned back to the agent, nodding vigorously. I'll take them, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. The agent beamed, pulling out a sheaf of papers. The old lady patted Emma's shoulder and said something that Google Translate rendered as, "You'll make these houses shine again." Plans for the future. On the drive back to the old lady's house, Emma was practically glowing with excitement. I can stay with her while I start fixing them up, she said, gesturing toward the old lady, who smiled warmly. And I have Vandalf to live in too. This is going to be an adventure. Maurice was already making plans. I'll oversee the renovations. Maybe I'll even help carry tools, or chase away pests. Do you think I could get a construction hat? I, on the other hand, was picturing all the ways I could disrupt the process. Knocking over paint cans, scattering tools, napping on freshly sanded floors. It was a chaos buffet waiting to happen. Oh, and by the way, if you're still listening to this madness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Trust me, the chaos is just getting started. Emma was too engrossed in her plans to notice. We'll start with the smaller house, she said. Fix it up first, then use it as a base while we work on the other one. It'll be hard work, but worth it. The old lady nodded in agreement, her eyes twinkling. Maurice sighed dreamily, leaning against the window. It's like a dream come true. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help feeling a twinge of anticipation. Sure, it was going to be messy, exhausting, and probably a complete disaster, but isn't that what made life interesting? As we pulled into the driveway, the old lady stepped out first, her gaze lingering on Emma with a mix of affection and encouragement. Maurice bounded out next, already babbling about where his new cat castle might go. And me? I sat in the doorway of Vandalf, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Somewhere deep in my cynical heart, I felt a flicker of excitement. This village was about to get a whole lot livelier. A plan takes shape. The old lady, ever the sage and the unofficial oracle of the village, sat across from Emma at her rustic kitchen table. The smell of fresh herbs and garlic wafted through the air as she poured tea into mismatched cups. Maurice and I lounged nearby, pretending not to eavesdrop on their conversation. You'll need help, the old lady said, her Italian flowing effortlessly. Emma, now more confident with Google Translate, nodded as the app worked its magic. The houses need work, serious work. I know some men, good men, who can help. 2 are older, experienced and reliable. 1 is younger, about your age, strong, hard-working. Emma hesitated. I wasn't really planning on hiring anyone. I thought I could do most of it myself, maybe learn as I go. The old lady gave her a look that could stop a freight train. Cara, don't be foolish. Some things, yes, you can do, but others, let the experts handle it. Besides, she added with a sly smile, it won't cost much here. And you are not poor, no? Emma chuckled nervously, scratching the back of her head. No, not exactly. I made some money with crypto trading, but it's not something people around here would really understand. The old lady tilted her head. Crypto trading? She pronounced the words carefully, as if tasting something unfamiliar. What is this? Emma attempted an explanation, but as soon as she mentioned blockchain and decentralized finance, the old lady waved her hand dismissively. Ah, never mind. It sounds like magic. What will you do when the houses are finished? You'll need something to keep busy, to bring life back to the village. Emma shrugged. I don't know. I'm not really skilled in anything except working on a laptop. The old lady tapped her chin thoughtfully, then her eyes lit up. The village needs a bakery. There hasn't been one here in years, not for miles around. People would come, even from other villages. A bakery? Emma blinked, the idea clearly catching her off guard. I don't know how to bake. The old lady smiled. I'll teach you everything I know. Bread, pastries, cakes. It's not so hard once you start. And you, she added with a playful wink, are not the type to give up. Emma's face lit up with excitement, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. A bakery, but with modern touches. Apps for delivery, maybe even a little cafe space. People love that stuff. The old lady chuckled, her eyes twinkling. You dream big, Cara, but dreaming is good. A feline perspective. While the humans plotted their bakery empire, Maurice and I found a sunny spot on the terrace. Maurice was chasing a leaf caught in the breeze, his white fur glowing in the golden light. I watched him for a moment, then sighed. "You know," I said, "humans only have us for a fraction of their lives, but for us, they're everything." Maurice paused, the leaf forgotten. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said, flicking my tail, "if you don't have a strong bond with your human, you're just one bad day away from the gutter. Trust me, I've seen it." Maurice's ears drooped slightly. "You mean like where we were before Emma?" "Exactly," I said. "We got lucky, but it's up to us to make sure we stay lucky. A good human is worth sticking with." Maurice nodded solemnly. "You're right, Fluffy. You're smart. Not just cynical, but actually smart." I smirked. "Don't get used to it." The workers arrive. A few days later, the workers showed up. The old lady had chosen well. The two older men, Carlo and Giuseppe, looked like they'd been born with hammers in their hands. Rugged and weathered, they carried themselves with quiet confidence. The younger one, Luca, was tall and lean, with a mop of dark hair and an easy smile that immediately put Emma at ease. "Buongiorno," Luca said, his voice warm and melodic. He shook Emma's hand, his grip firm but friendly. "I've heard about your project. We're happy to help." Emma blushed slightly but quickly regained her composure. "Thank you. I'm not skimping on quality for anything, so please let me know what you need." As they began discussing plans, the old lady busied herself preparing a feast. The scent of roasting vegetables and freshly baked bread filled the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of red wine. Maurice and I watched from a safe distance, occasionally sneaking bites from the edge of the table. A feast to remember. That evening, the old lady's dining room was a riot of laughter and clinking glasses. Plates of food covered every inch of the table, pasta glistening with olive oil, roasted meats, and bowls of colourful salads. Wine flowed freely, and even Emma allowed herself to relax, her laughter mingling with the workers' stories. Luca, it turned out, had a sharp wit and a mischievous sense of humour. He and Emma bantered easily, though it was clear their connection was purely friendly for now. Maurice, ever the optimist, whispered, "Do you think they'll fall in love?" "Don't be ridiculous," I replied, licking my paw. "Emma's head is too full of bakery plans and app ideas to think about romance. Besides, I'm here to keep an eye on things." As the evening wore on, the conversation grew louder and the wine glasses emptier. The old lady, ever the gracious host, seemed to glow with happiness. For a moment, the room felt like a glimpse into a future where the village was alive again, full of warmth and community. If you're still with us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The chaos is just beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Maurice blinked at me. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" I asked innocently, flicking my tail. "You know, talking to them." "Don't worry about it," I said, settling into my spot. "Let's just enjoy the calm before the storm." The morning after the feast, Maurice and I decided to stretch our legs. The humans were busy with their endless plans. Emma was sketching out ideas for renovations. It was the perfect time for us to sneak off and explore the area. "Fluffy," Maurice said as we wandered through the old lady's sprawling garden. "Do you think there's anything interesting around here? Maybe a hidden treasure? Or a secret door to Narnia?" I gave him a look. "If you think Narnia is at the end of this path, you've been spending too much time inhaling lavender. But fine, let's have a look. Just don't get lost. I'm not organizing a search party." The garden was a dreamscape of fragrant herbs and blooming flowers. Maurice darted around like a squirrel on caffeine, his tail twitching with excitement. We padded past neat rows of rosemary and lavender, then through a patch of wildflowers buzzing with bees. At the far end of the garden, we stumbled upon a narrow dirt path winding uphill, bordered by overgrown bushes. "Where do you think this leads?" Maurice asked, practically vibrating with curiosity. "No idea," I said, flicking my tail, "but if it leads to food or a good nap spot, I'm in." A delightful discovery. After a short climb, the path leveled out, and we found ourselves overlooking the outskirts of the village where Emma's new houses stood. The stone buildings glowed in the soft morning light, their rugged beauty standing out against the lush hills beyond. Birds chirped in the distance, and the air was cool and crisp. "Fluffy," Maurice breathed, his wide eyes taking in the view. "It's not far at all. We can come here whenever we want." I raised an eyebrow. "Come here for what? To marvel at the rustic charm?" Maurice grinned, his whiskers twitching. "No, silly. To visit the old lady. If Emma ever forgets to feed us, or gets too busy with her renovations, we can just trot down to her house and get extra treats. She loves us." I snorted. "She loves you. I'm tolerated because I don't knock over her pots." Maurice tilted his head, undeterred. "She loves you too. She always calls us her two lovely cats, remember?" "Well, I am lovely," I said, pausing to inspect my fur. "But you might be onto something. A direct line to treats isn't the worst idea." We turned back down the path, our paws crunching on the dirt as the morning sun warmed our backs. The old lady was in her garden when we returned, her hands deep in the soil as she tended to her plants. She looked up and smiled when she saw us. "Ah, my two lovely cats," she said in Italian, her voice as warm as the sun. She wiped her hands on her apron, then reached for a jar on the nearby table, pulling out two small treats. Maurice practically levitated. "See? She does love us," Maurice said, chomping on his treat. "This is the best discovery ever." I accepted my treat with a dignified nod. "Fine, you win. The path stays." A bonding moment. Later that afternoon, Emma joined the old lady in the shade of the garden, both of them resting after a busy morning. The old lady, ever observant, glanced at Fluffy and Maurice lounging nearby. "You have such lovely cats," she remarked. Emma smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I don't know what I'd do without them," she admitted. "It's just us. After my grandparents passed, it's been hard." The old lady placed a hand on Emma's. "Your grandparents? What happened, cara mia?" Emma hesitated, then took a deep breath. "They raised me after my parents passed away. Last year their house caught fire. They didn't make it. The insurance money, it's the reason I can afford all of this. But losing them..." Her voice broke, and she wiped a tear from her cheek. "Without Fluffy and Maurice, I'd probably be in a psych ward. They've kept me sane, even if Fluffy is a grump." The old lady's eyes softened. She reached over and clasped Emma's hand. "You're not alone, Cara. You have your cats, and now you have me too." Emma smiled through her tears. "Thank you. That means a lot." The old lady rose and walked into her house, returning moments later with a small framed photograph. She handed it to Emma. "This is my daughter," she said, her voice tinged with melancholy. Emma studied the picture, a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile, standing in front of the very garden they were sitting in. "She's beautiful," Emma said softly. "Where is she now?" The old lady sighed. "I don't know. She left years ago. Maybe the village life wasn't for her, or maybe something happened. I've always wondered. But life moves on, doesn't it?" Emma nodded, her fingers brushing the edge of the photo. "It does, but it's okay to hold on to the hope that you'll see her again." The old lady smiled wistfully. "Hope, Cara, is what keeps us going." A cat's paradise. As evening fell, Maurice and I padded out into the night. The humans were winding down for the day, their chatter and laughter fading into the background as we ventured into the quiet village. "Do you think there are mice here?" Maurice asked, his nose twitching as he sniffed the cool night air. "Probably," I said, "and birds too if you're fast enough." Maurice grinned. "This place is kind of perfect, isn't it? Like a cat's paradise." I glanced around at the stone walls, the overgrown gardens, and the endless starry sky. "Yeah," I admitted, "it's not bad." As we prowled through the shadows, the village felt alive in a way I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't just a place, it was home. Dear listener, are you still awake? Or have you nodded off because there's been no chaos this episode? Either way, if you've stuck with us this far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Trust me, the real madness is just around the corner. Maurice blinked at me. "Still talking to them?" "Always," I replied, flicking my tail. "Now let's find something to chase. The night's still young." And with that, we disappeared into the shadows, ready to embrace whatever adventures tomorrow would bring. Fluffy out.